I'm going to go over some of the Varnish and Decoupage varnish and glue products that we carry, and also go over a little bit about decoupaging paper. The first step you want to do is you take your substrate and you're going to want to give it a coat of white paint. The reason is when you're using your rice paper, the white underneath will make your image pop even more, as opposed to leaving it in the natural state. If it's wood or something painted dark, it won't be as vivid an image. To do this, you can use any kind of white paint, acrylic primer, just a white acrylic paint, and if it's a slick surface, you're going to want to use a bonding primer. I like to do 2 coats with thorough drying in between. Once your paint or primer is dry, you're ready to go. And the first step is deciding whether you're going to cut out your image or whether after it dries, you'll be taking it off with sandpaper. So for instance, on this piece that I'm doing, it laps over the edge, meaning once I decoupage it on, I can take my sandpaper and after it's dry, I can sand off the edges. But I can't do that up here. I only want this part of the image, so I'm going to have to take this part off. I'm not going to use scissors because then that gives you too blunt and straight of a line, and then you can't blend your paint in as well as if it's the smooth frayed edges. Now if I was going to put a mold here, I could just cut it because the mold would then cover the edge of the sharply cut paper. So what I can do is either take a paintbrush with a little bit of water on it and just make a line with the water and tear it apart. Or you can use a water pen. These are just plastic pens filled with water. And here, as you can see, I just draw my line where I'm going to tear it off. That just makes it easier for me to tear. I could tear this paper dry, but wetting it makes it a little bit easier. So make sure you hold your finger so you don't tear into your image. And now I have the top half done. I'm going to be gluing this on in the center, and the wording at the bottom can come off when I sand it rather than cutting it away or pulling it apart. There are several different options I have for the decoupage varnish and glue, and here we have Pentart decoupage varnish and glue matte, decoupage glue ultra matte, and there's also silky shine, which I don't have. It's up to you whether you want a little bit of a shine or a matte finish. The difference between matte and ultra matte is the matte has just a very slight shine to it, really not noticeable at all, except for when you're applying the varnish. And if you were to go out onto your painted area, you might see a very slight little bit of a shine to it. The ultra matte, there's virtually no shine whatsoever. The other nice thing about the ultra matte is there won't be any brush strokes when you're using it on top of your paper. I'll be using the matte finish today. Using any kind of soft brush, it can be a round tipped or straight across. If you're doing very large projects, you can use a larger brush. What I do is I make sure my image is where I want it to be, making sure all your pieces that you tore off are nice and fluffy and pulled out so they're not bunched up or they're not folded under. And then I just fold back half, either a side or maybe the top, whichever you want. I take some of the decoupage glue and I start spreading it on. You want to use a nice even coat and spread it all over your paper, and then lay your paper down. You can use your hand to smooth it out, but then to get an even better connection with your board and the paper, you can do several things. You could take a piece of plastic that had decoupage paper inside or something else, put your hand inside and smooth it out. You could use a brayer over something plastic and press it down. Or you can take some crumpled up plastic wrap and gently go over it. You want to make sure you're gentle, because if you used a lot of glue and it seeps through, if it's a little wet, you want to be gentle so you don't rip your paper. And then just go on to do the other side. Press the other side down. And then you can put another layer on top. Because this is decoupage varnish and glue, it can be used for both. The coat underneath to adhere it, and also as a varnish on top. And you just want to be gentle, and you don't want to overwork it. Just put it on, and that's it. You don't need to go back over it a lot, because you don't want to mess up your image. And that's it. You can let it dry naturally, or you can use a heat gun or a hair dryer and apply heat, not too close to it because you don't want to burn it, and you can dry it with the heat gun or the blow dryer. After your rice paper has completely dried, you can come back with sandpaper and sand off the edges. It's very important that you go downward with your sandpaper. You don't want to go back and forth or up and down. Just in a downward motion so you don't rip your rice paper. Now you can come back with any kind of molds or stencils and do whatever you'd like to the rest of your project. There's also Pentart Decoupage Varnish and Glue with glitter in it. If you'd like to add a little bit of sparkle to your project, just use a soft brush, and as your final coat, paint a light coat of the varnish on top. And when it dries, you'll have a nice light sparkle on top of your project. Here's what the Decoupage Varnish and Glue glitter looks like up close. Here I've painted different colors on a tag so you can see better what the colors look like. Pentart also has Decoupage Varnish and Glue for textiles. This works perfectly on any kind of material, apron, this is a bag. You could do it on jeans, any kind of clothes. There are some special steps to using it though. So first you want to start out with a freshly clean, dried, and ironed product and put a coat of paint first. I use the fabric and leather paint from Pentart. This will help give a good adhesion from the glue, so rather than sticking directly to the cloth, it will have a nice even surface to stick to. After I have all of my rice paper laid out so I know where I want to put it, I use a good amount of the decoupage glue and put it underneath just like usual. and then on top. Make sure you give it a good coating and then go back and really press it in. You want to make sure it's sticking really well. The other thing you want to do is you don't want to cut your rice paper. You want to have the nice fluffy edges like this, because then it's more for the glue to stick. It's like more surface area for the glue to stick to the material. So really push it down there. And then give a heavy coating on top. Now this was just a quick demo on the textile glue. We will do a longer one if you're interested in seeing more about the textile glue. Also, when you're finished gluing everything down, letting it dry, you can come back with stencils or and your paints and blend everything in. You can see this one that I did here. I blended all of the pieces in together with the different colors of fabric paint, and then you can even come back and add other things to it, and they'll stick well to the fabric. I have these little bubbles here, and I use heavy body gel for that. Two products that are strictly varnishes. We have a water-based matte varnish, and this is a water-based semi-gloss varnish, and this is a mist in a spray bottle. This you just use as normal with a brush. Just take out some of the varnish and spread it on your project. This is a matte finish, but then there's also a semi-gloss. You want to shake this up, and the reason you would use this is perhaps you have a project that has texture to it. Maybe you've used the rust kits and you don't want to really use a brush on it and press on it. You can spray your project. So give it a good shake, and that will dry in a nice semi-gloss finish. Two of the other varnishes available are the clear solvent-based gloss and the solvent-based matte varnish. The matte has to be shaken. There's a couple little balls in the bottom, so make sure you hear them swirling around and give it a good shake so everything is mixed. The reason you would use the clear varnish solvent-based gloss would be over the fine line crackle. We have a fine line crackle system, a 2-component system that gives you the cracks like you'd find in broken porcelain. And that has to be sealed when you're totally finished. It has to be sealed with the solvent-based gloss is recommended because porcelain has such a high sheen to it, and you're trying to resemble that. It leaves a nice sheen on your project. And anytime you want to use a varnish on top of a solvent, such as a wax or anything else that you've used on your mixed media, you would use the solvent-based over a solvent-based product that you've painted.